like to talk to you today about the Vihuela de mano. The Vihuela is a cordophone instrument that was developed in the 15th and 16th century in Spain. By this time the 16th century came along, it was an instrument of great virtuosic ability and repertory. And if you wanted to show your chops, you played the Vihuela. By about 1620 or so, it was synonymous with the Baroque guitar, however, and it fell out of fashion. There are only three surviving vihuelas, possibly a fourth in London. They're researching that now. There are two featured here, the Guadalupe on the right and the Chambura on the left, which was authenticated in 2004. The Quito vihuela is housed in the Western Hemisphere and was actually believed to be made here in the Western Hemisphere. It was owned by Saint Mariana de Jesus, and because it was owned by someone who was later canonized as a saint in the Catholic Church, is considered a second-class relic, which is priceless to the Roman Catholic Church. But historically, it's priceless to us as musicians because we have a history behind this instrument. We know who played it, we know where she lived, we know what she sang, and there's a historical record of where she roamed. It's housed in the Iglesia de la Compañía de Jesús in Quito, Ecuador, and I do believe it's on display. And you can see here, I do believe it has 6 courses, which is typical of a vihuela. These courses are tuned in unison or octaves. It's very much like a flat-backed lute, maybe pitched a little higher. Usually has a rosette. It used gut strings and 10 gut frets. And in the beginning, it was shaped a lot like a modern day violin, but over time became rounder and shaped broader, more like a guitar. The information that we get from vihuelas historically come from libros, and there are 13 libros. In those 13 libros, there are 750 works of music, and 712 come from just 7 books. But what makes these libros so important is actually the information that is printed in the passages, especially over technique and tempo. In El Maestro by Luis Milan in the 1530s, they do believe it is the earliest printed verbal tempo markings. And there's a litany of other firsts that you can read here that is in that book kind of presents to us historically. It's almost like a methodology book, increasingly getting difficult in different modes as the repertoire as you go through the book. But it's the tempo markings that set it apart. And Milan says this about the tempo. This music, in order to give it its natural beauty, must not have respect for the compás or tactus. So we see this freedom from a strict tempo. Redobles is a type of ornamental passage that we see in vihuela music, and we think of when we think of Spanish music. The dedillo technique shown here by Blanche is a rapid moving. Now, if that doesn't scream Spanish and make you want some paella, I don't know what does. But there are some other fingering techniques here. The thumb under, which is typical with lute, the thumb out, typical with vihuelist, and alternating first and second fingers. Puyana said, as I've said to you, to strike with a stroke without the intrusion of the nail or any other kind of contrivance is great excellence, because only in the finger as a living thing the spirit lies. So we see there was opinions about using nails with vihuelas. Um, Vihuelas were used wherever the lute was played, so sacred and secular literature, prominent in Spain, Italy, Portugal, Latin America, courts, etc. Emperor the Charles the Fifth liked vihuela intabulations for Josquin Gombert. The most common form for vihuelas is the fantasia, although there's numerous others. There's not a lot of dance music, probably because it was virtuosic and because of the tempo freedoms. Here are the prominent composers, and not only were they prolific, but they were virtuosic. Here's some iconography. This is from a fresco from the Iberian Peninsula, 16th century, playing a vihuela, and you can see the guitar-like shape and the peg box there. And then here, this piece of art is actually housed in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and I've had the pleasure of seeing it. It depicts Saint Bonaventure and Saint Anthony of Padua playing Vihuela de Mano and de Arco, respectively. Uh, and then finally, some performers of Vihuela is Hopkins Smith, who's also a famous lutist. And I'm going to jump down here to Ramiro Morales, who's from Madrid. He was nice enough to answer my quote unquote fangirl questions on YouTube. This is him playing Alonso Mudara's Fantasia de Pasos de Cantado. And you can see some of those techniques here on the rosette. It's really been a lot of fun studying this, and I hope you enjoy it.